this is Lauren with Shabby Chic Sunday, and today we're going to make a game board together. So I found this tray at the Dollar Tree, and it actually holds little wooden cutout chips, but I bought it for the tray itself because I thought it would make an awesome Tic Tac Toe board. So we're going to need that, and we're going to need some glue. This is just Mod Podge. We're going to need a paintbrush. Actually, grab two, one for the paint and one for the glue, and then some paint. I'm going to use white chalk paint. Lastly, you'll need some paper to cover our game board squares. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to paint our game board. So after I get this paint open, you'll see that I try to use this sponge paintbrush first, and that was an absolute disaster because I couldn't get into all the nooks and crannies of the squares. Then I tried to use a paintbrush, and I obviously didn't clean it off well enough because it left this ugly mint green residue. Finally, I found a clean paintbrush and I was able to go through and paint the board. We're going to be covering up the squares with paper, so it really isn't necessary to paint anything other than the edges, but I just kept going. I think I was enjoying the painting process. I was not particular with my painting, and there's still tiny bits and pieces of the wood grain showing, but I thought that added to the shabby aesthetic that I was going for. I also ended up painting the sides, which was really silly because I'm going to cover those up too. But I finally got it all together once I got to the back side and only painted the side edges. So what I've done off camera is prepare my papers. I am using Rosewood Digital Kit by Shabby Art Boutique for the craft room, and in this kit you have access to each individual paper file. So what that means is you're able to download certain papers that you want and then size them to your liking if you don't need to print the entire kit. So I've chosen 9 papers that I want to use for my 9 squares of my game board. I've downloaded them and then I sized them 1.5 by 1.5 inches on a Google Doc because that is the size of each individual square on my game board. I'm now cutting out the pieces, and I should mention I also printed a paper for the back side of the game board. Since we're also covering the sides, I'll need to print strips for those too. I think to go with a shabby aesthetic, another idea would be to just take a ruler and then tear the edges of the paper with the ruler instead of using the finite paper cutter, just to add that disheveled look to the sides. And here are my 9 squares that I've chosen. And what I do is I kind of just lay them out after looking through them and decide in advance how I want to lay them out on my game board. I'm now going to glue each piece down into the squares, and this is just Mod Podge in a smaller container. I'm not spending too much time pressing the paper down right now. I'm just focusing on covering all of the squares with paper. After I finished gluing everything down, I found that using this glue spreader was absolutely perfect for getting in the nooks and crannies of each box and making sure that everything was pressed down flat with no air bubbles. Once the front tiles are done, we're going to add Mod Podge to the back with a sponge brush to make sure all areas are covered, and then add our back page. Since this is going to be the bottom and over time there will be wear and tear from sliding across the table, I'm going to add Mod Podge over the top as well just to act as a protective shield. It will dry clear. This step is of course optional. I should add that I do find using these sponge brushes works best for Mod Podge because I have learned my lesson once or twice using brushes, and my end result always shows brush fragments that separate from the brush and then get stuck in the glue. Once the back is done, we're going to work on covering the sides. I rotated between the green stripes and the purple and white polka dots because I thought that those contrasted so nicely together. Originally, I was going to leave these sides white, but it's such a small detail and I think it really made a big difference on my game board. Once we're done gluing the sides, we need to create our X and O pieces. I downloaded 2 of the elements from the kit that I wanted to play with. I chose the hearts and then the empty flower buckets. I downloaded those 2 elements to my Cricut design space, and I sized them to 1 inch so that they would fit nicely inside the squares. I'm then having my Cricut cut them out because I am a terrible fussy cutter. Technically, you could be done now once your pieces are cut out, but I'm going to do just one more little thing. So the next step is completely optional. I'm going to add resin to my chip pieces to harden them and make them more durable and long-lasting. It's a very easy 2-step process. We're simply going to add the resin, ensuring that we cover all parts. And it's easier if you hold the item with tweezers, but of course I couldn't find mine in time for this video. So once our item is covered, we're going to pop it underneath the UV light, and that time is going to range anywhere between 20 seconds and 60 seconds depending on the thickness of the resin and the UV light that you're using. I'm going to leave mine in for about 30 seconds, and then it's going to finish with a really nice gloss. Sometimes, depending on the paper you use and the amount of resin, you may find your paper to curl as it's hardening under the light. I find that if I touch just the tips of the sides of my paper element with my nails, I can hold it down to the table while it's drying under the light, and it will harden and dry flat. Another easier option would be to use resin tape and then tape your paper to the table as it dries under the lamp, and then you just peel it off once it's hardened. Now, I know that these pieces are going to last longer and also be easier to pick up and play with now that they have the resin on them. And now we're ready to play. So this was a really easy and quick project, and I thought it would make a really cute coffee table decor piece for spring, or even at the kitchen table for the kids to play with when they're having their morning breakfast. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you make one too. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.